Welcome to Consider This with Big Joe Clark. Joe is a certified financial planner with more than 28 years of experience in the financial services industry. He serves as the managing partner of the Financial Enhancement Group, LLC, and also taught financial planning at Purdue University for 7 years. The Financial Enhancement Group is an SEC-registered investment advisory firm based in Indiana with more than $200 million in assets, serving clients in more than 20 states. Indiana offices are located in Anderson, Fishers, Lafayette, and Rensselaer, as well as Sonoma County, California. This show is for educational purposes, and you're strongly encouraged to consult your advisor regarding your individual issues and opportunities. Joe can be reached at 800-928-4001. You can find more information about Joe and the Financial Enhancement Group at yourlifeafterwork.com. Enjoy the show, and remember to consider this.
Well, good morning and welcome to Consider This. I'm Joe Clark.
I'm Sherry Contos.
Boy, do we have a show for you. First of all, I hope you all had a happy Father's Day last week. It was really kind of, it was odd for me. We had friends that were celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary, so we got up to go to church, and, I would normally golf, and I was kind of like, I want to go see my friends, and half of Anderson was up in Syracuse. I want to go see my friends, but I want to golf, and then God helped with that because the course was closed, and the rain just came everywhere. So I hope you all had a happy Father's Day. I lost my father 16 years ago, and it's always a time to be able to remember back some of the things. And my brother is much better with the genealogy and the posting of the pictures, and here's when we were 3 and 7 and, those kind of things. And it's, it's a good thing, but I hope you had a wonderful day. I know it is a hard time with some people because we're not all close to our fathers. Some of us didn't have them, and I can appreciate that and understand. But
I went to church with my dad for the first time, just the two of us, in my entire life. On Father's Day. It was great. It was fun. It was good.
Good. I am glad to hear what. Yeah.
I know, it was neat.
That's very, very cool. Anyhow, we had a lot to talk about on the show today. I would love to go through the breakdown of Amazon buying Whole Foods and talk about Jeffrey Immelt at General Electric leaving, but that's what I do in the Market Carver. That's why, so if you want to know more about that kind of stuff, make sure you go to our website, yourlifeafterwork.com, sign up for the Market Carver. I send out a 3 to 5 minute video every Thursday morning that says, hey, here's what we thought was the most important thing that happened in the economy and in the markets last week. On this show, we're going to focus on other stuff. So got to ask some really good questions. One, what is this target dated RMD fund thing all about, the brand new thing that just came out? We're going to talk about it. We're going to have our first cooking segment in a long time where we talk about different heating mechanisms and heating styles and how that relates to volatility in your portfolio.
Yes.
Things that you need to be aware of and understand. We're going to talk about taxation and long-term care. That was a question that came in, is my long-term care deductible? So I'm going to kind of walk you through what itemizing means and how it works. Key thing with that, though, is understand that things change. Your tax return, especially in retirement, changes many times, every other year, every year. There's just volatility that's to it. You need to understand it, and you need to be able to pounce on those opportunities. And that's why that tax planning part is so critical. You're going to get a letter from us if we're taking care of you the 1st of October that says, have these 8 to 12 things happen to you, your parents, or your children? Because I try to use 3 tax returns anytime that I possibly can to put us in the best possible tax environment. Hey, you're listening to Consider This. I'm Joe Clark, along with Sherry Contos. We got a lot to cover. We'll take a break. Be right back with the show.
Welcome to Consider This with Big Joe Clark. Joe is a certified financial planner with more than 28 years of experience in the financial services industry. He serves as the managing partner of the Financial Enhancement Group, LLC, and also taught financial planning at Purdue University for 7 years. The Financial Enhancement Group is an SEC-registered investment advisory firm based in Indiana with more than $200 million in assets, serving clients in more than 20 states. Indiana offices are located in Anderson, Fishers, Lafayette, and Rensselaer, as well as Sonoma County, California. The show is for educational purposes, and you're strongly encouraged to consult your advisor regarding your individual issues and opportunities. Joe can be reached at 800-928-4001. You can find more information about Joe and the Financial Enhancement Group at yourlifeafterwork.com. Enjoy the show, and remember to consider this.
Good morning and welcome to Consider This. I'm Joe Clark.
I am Sherry Contos.
Very, very happy to have you along.
We are.
You know, there's just fun, loving stuff going on in the world. You know, Amazon's taking out Whole Foods.
I know.
Jeffrey Immelt, after 16 years, is no longer going to be at the helm of General Electric.
Yes.
And Fidelity is trying to figure out an RMD solution.
Really?
Yes. Now, I will tell you that
we need to say what RMDs are.
Brilliant marketing.
Okay.
Though not something that most of you who are taking the time out of your day listening to the show should pay attention to. Maybe for parents with less money. So what is a required minimum distribution? Very good, Sherry, keeping me on task.
Mm-hmm.
RMDs you will see and hear much, much, much more about. Required means you have to, right?
Yes.
Minimum means there's a minimum amount that you can take, and a distribution means it's coming out. So this is money that is in your IRA, your 401k, your 403b, or an inherited IRA, even if it's a Roth. So if I have a Roth IRA, I don't have to take required minimum distributions. If I die and Barb, my wife, inherits it, she doesn't have to take required minimum distributions, but my daughters would have to take a required minimum distribution. They don't have to pay taxes on it because it's a Roth, but they still have to take the money. Okay? So again, when does this start? Well, technically, required minimum distributions start the year after the year you turn 70 and a half.
That is so weird.
But if you wait to that second year, you've actually got to take two distributions. So almost everybody begins at 70 and a half.
Okay.
Now, here's the scare tactic, and it's a true one. Right? The penalty for not taking the money out is a 50% penalty. Right? 50% of what you should have taken is the deemed penalty. That's ridiculous. And I honestly, I don't think I've ever seen it enforced.
Really?
So people will come in and they've missed RMDs for 2 or 3 years because they didn't know they had to take them, or they just weren't with it mentally or emotionally. So we go back, we figure out what they should have taken. We take that one distribution for all 3 years in 1 year, send a letter to the IRS saying we made an oopsie, we fixed it, here's how we fixed it. And I've never seen the penalty assessed. Now, Sherry raised her hand, but you can't see that on the radio.
I know, they can't see it, but I have a question. So when you say you have to take it, logistically, walk me through that. How do you take a distribution?
So in our case at the Financial Enhancement Group, IRAs are different. That's just the best way to think about them.
Okay.
IRAs, people kind of list IRAs, 401ks, and 403bs together because of their tax status. The money is typically tax deferred, meaning you're going to have to pay taxes on it in the future. That's why the distribution becomes so critical for the IRS. And why they care.
Right, I was going to say.
So most of it is tax deferred, and you have to, you've got to pull it out in that year you turn 70 and a half technically. If you have 3 401k plans, you have to take 3 required minimum distributions, 1 from each plan. The company is obligated at the beginning of the year to tell you what your amount is. It's a mathematical calculation.
They will tell you this is your required minimum.
So the older you become,
okay,
the higher percentage you have to take out.
Okay.
At 70 and a half, it's roughly 3.45%.
Okay.
So if you've got $1 million in an IRA and you turn 70, you're taking out about $34,500, right? Each year that you get older, that percentage increases because of the way life expectancy works. You live longer, right? And as you don't, they don't assume you're going to live a year longer the next year than you would have lived, but it's, maybe 10 months, 11 months, et cetera. And it continues to go so that when you get in the age 80s, you're taking out 7-8% of the value of your account. So, and it's based on December 31st. So if I'm managing the money and you've got a, let's call it a very conservative, 5 or 6% return, and you only had to take out 3.45% the year before, you had more growth than what you pulled out.
Okay.
So in your second year of RMDs, you actually have more income that you have to recognize in your tax return.
But they're going to tell you that.
It's a real yes, they tell you that.
Okay.
That doesn't mean that they took it out.
Right. You have to.
So I sent you a letter.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. In our case, we do this automatically in the middle of the summer because we do a lot of qualified charitable distributions with the IRA money as opposed to people recognizing the income. We have a lot of tax strategies we use around required minimum distributions because, again, people don't pay attention to their tax returns like they ought to.
Right.
But for people who don't have the financial enhancement group, right, they've got money at a mutual fund company or whatever. The mutual fund company will send them a letter and say, here's how much you have to take out. So if you have 7 IRAs,
okay,
even though you can take the money out of one IRA to satisfy all seven, you can't do that with a 401k, right? But if you could take money out of one of them to satisfy all 7, right? But many times that's what we do. But when the money comes in, or when the letter comes in, it says this is the amount you have to pull out. You still have to call the custodian and tell them, yes, I want you to either send it to a charity for a qualified charitable distribution, or I want you to put it in my regular account. So you're going to pay taxes, but then that's what a lot of our families end up doing.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily need the income. But the money's going to be, or the money's going to come to you, but you have to proactively do it.
Okay.
Right? What Fidelity, and this is an article in MarketWatch, by the way, if you want to read it. I helped put part of it together. Robert Powell is the author, and the title under MarketWatch, A Target Date Fund for Retirees Who Aren't Sure How to Invest and Need to Take RMDs, Required Minimum Distributions. So again, I think it was a brilliant form of investing. And if you happen to have a parent, who's 70, 75, 80, who's been forgetting to take their RMDs, and they've got $20,000 or $30,000 in an IRA, and it's just a hassle, this might be a nice thing to be able to use to set it up. Okay. But for the most part, I think you are missing the boat on some things. For one, I'm not a target dated fund and fan, and you all know that if you know me. I don't like mutual funds, let alone target dated funds. The concept is the older you get, the more conservative your money needs to be invested in their premise, in their theory of target dated. Investing is a function of need, not of age. So when Barb's grandma died at 98, 10 years ago, 12, 13, 14 years ago, I could have bought CDs at 3% at that point in time,
right,
or I could have had our money invested in the equity in an equity and bond portfolio that my mother-in-law inherited. Which one made more sense? Yes, she was 98. She hadn't spent the money yet. Probably wasn't gonna.
Right.
Didn't.
Yeah.
Right. So use money based on need,
right,
not on age.
Yeah.
Okay. Not a target dated fund to begin with, but the concept of being able to help people who don't understand how required minimum distributions work is pretty good. And if you want to read the article, there's a few things that I say in there. Again, I know this, you'll find this shocking, Sherry.
Yeah.
Most of my comments are about the taxation issue.
No.
Your taxes change from a year-to-year standpoint, right? When you may have a large medical expenses in one year, especially when you're in that age bracket,
Sure,
70 and up. That would change how much money I would want to recognize. So maybe even though there's a required minimum distribution, maybe in this particular year I want to take more, right? Because
you have offset it.
You've got I've got deductions I can use, and if you once you've not recognized income, you can't go back and change your mind.
Okay, so
that's why tax planning becomes so critical, and it has to be done before December 31st.
If you take more than you have to in 1 year, does that mean you could?
Does not carry over, but it reduces the amount that you would have to take in a future year.
That's what I mean.
It's one of the reasons only because there's less money in the account.
Oh, so the percentage makes it, okay,
correct.
I get it.
So think about a mortgage payment. Just because I made 2 mortgage payments this month, I still have to make one next month.
Right, I get it.
But on down the road, I would have one less that I would have to make.
I see, yep.
So let me say that real quickly again, though, because this is critical. There are times when I want to recognize more income intentionally, because my deductions will allow that to be taxed at a lower rate, sometimes even zero.
Yeah.
If you don't recognize that income, you don't get a chance to amend a return or go backwards. It is simply lost. That's why we do tax planning for certain every single year for the families we serve. You need to be doing the same. Hey, you're listening to Consider This. I'm Joe Clark along with Sherry Contos. Hope you're having an outstanding day. If you got a question or comment, shoot me an email. ConsiderThis@yourlifeafterwork.com. We'll be right back.
Welcome to Consider This with Big Joe Clark. Joe is a certified financial planner with more than 28 years of experience in the financial services industry. He serves as the managing partner of the Financial Enhancement Group, LLC. The Financial Enhancement Group is an SEC-registered investment advisory firm based in Indiana with more than $200 million in assets, serving clients in more than 20 states. Indiana offices are located in Anderson, Fishers, Lafayette, and Rensselaer, as well as Sonoma County, California. This show is for educational purposes, and you're strongly encouraged to consult your advisor regarding your individual issues and opportunities. Joe can be reached at 800-928-4001. You can find more information about Joe and the Financial Enhancement Group at yourlifeafterwork.com. Enjoy the show, and remember to consider this.
Well, good morning and welcome back to Consider This. I'm Joe Clark.
I'm Sherry Contos.
Happy to have you along. Hey, for those of you who have been around for a long time, I've this is my 20th year, I believe, on radio.
Wow.
Been writing the newspaper column for the Herald Bulletin a little bit longer than that. I have a lot of fun trying to teach people about money. And here's what I know. It is easier for me to teach you through the lens of which you understand already than it is to give you an abstract thing like a required minimum distribution.
Right.
Yeah. You're not 70 and a half, Sherry. You have, there's nothing that grabs you and gets you, though we do need to be talking to your mother about some of that stuff.
Yeah, that's
true. Okay. So one of the things that I did years ago was created a cooking show, and we called it The Market Carver, right?
Oh, wow.
And the idea was that I would talk about various different things. Like one of my favorite shows that I got an awful lot of comments on, there were two actually. One was in the IBJ and made the cover of it, but it was teaching people what quantitative easing was by cooking chicken marsala. And so we'll leave that one alone. But I did one with my brother, and he's also a certified financial planner, and I taught about the difference between sea salt, the junk salt we have on our tables, and kosher salt.
Yeah.
And when you would use which one. And because people understand cooking, we all eat.
Right, sure.
Even vegetarians eat, right?
Right.
People had a better understanding of it, and then I was able to try to explain the differences, right? So somebody, actually more than one, but people have asked me to bring that show back. It's probably not going to happen, but they said, can you do a cooking radio segment? I don't know, but we're going to try.
We could try. Okay.
We're going to try. So one of the things, when you look at the 5 critical elements, right? Those are the 5 things that we take care of for the families that we serve. Your life after work, some people would call that retirement planning, is 1. Mm-hmm. Tax planning every year is 2. The investment playbook is number 3. We'll be back to that. 4 is the good, the bad, and ugly of life. Life happens. And 5 is a legacy plan. So in that investment playbook, one of the things that we try to teach people to understand is that your money has to do different things at different times. Yeah. We tend to look at our statements when we're 18, 35, 55, 75. We look at them like bank statements where it says you've got $100,000, right? Mm-hmm. And the bottom line is, in each one of what I call the 3 phases of finance, we need to be looking at those statements a little bit differently. We need to be investing a little bit differently. So in your first phase of finance, what I call accumulation, you have 2 objectives. 1, Sherry, you need to be saving the right percentage of your income. Mm-hmm. The earlier you start, the less that percentage needs to be, but it needs to be consistent throughout your life. Then the second thing you need to do in accumulation is build tax diversification. That means we want some money that's already been taxed. It means we want some money that's tax-free in a Roth of some nature whenever we can get it there. And you may have some money that is tax-deferred if you have an employer plan. Eventually, what you're saving is not as important as what you've already saved, what you've accumulated. We call that the preservation stage, right? And that's where it's just going to be there it's going to be there for a while. For some people, it's there forever. I've got families that are 90 that have never used the money. They've taken money out of IRAs because they had to, but it immediately went to another brokerage account, right? It just left the IRA, IRS got the tax sum, and then it went to another side. For some of us, for many of us, for most of us, you're going to go through a period of time called distribution. That's where you actually have to get the money out, right? So in that preservation stage we just talked about, your only goal, your only objective is average return. But that's why that risk tolerance part is so important. It works where you've got to be there beginning, middle, and end in order to get that average return. In distribution, when you go to land the plane, right, when you go to take the money out and start using it as an income, the 2 goals are no longer are they have anything to do with average return. They have to do with the volatility between each distribution point when you take your money out. And secondly, what is the tax rate you pay on the average dollar that you pull out? So let's think about this in terms of food for a second, right?
Okay.
My three favorite heating mechanisms, the way to heat, are braising, simmering, and sautéing.
Okay.
So if I were going to simmer something, Sherry, I'm not Italian at all, but I have an Italian heart, and I certainly have an Italian taste.
Okay.
So when I want to make a good, what we would call Sunday gravy, which most people in Indiana would call a marinara, with the meat. So you get the veggies, the mirepoix, the onions and the carrots and the celery, and what you're trying to do is to get a crisp brown on them. So you saute them, right? You want a lot of heat,
right?
And you don't care that there's a lot of heat. You're good with there being a lot of heat, right? That heat brings out that flavor. It lets them meld and blend together and create those great flavors.
Okay.
When you're thinking about what's going on, that's really what you're doing in accumulation, right? You're letting these flavors begin to meld and gel together. So you may have international, you may have domestic, large caps, small caps.
Okay.
But you've got a lot of that and a lot of heat. And the fact that it goes up and down in temperature or the volatility of the market doesn't matter so much because you're going to be there for a long, long, long period of time.
Okay.
Right? And then eventually, once I've got those veggies nice and browned and melded, then I'm going to simmer. And that's when you walk into the house and you see the pot of the tomatoes and that smell, that aroma that just fill in the house. And it's going to cook for 3 to 5 to 7 hours, depending on how many people I'm cooking for, with this just little light rumble, right? As much as I can take. Now, that's important. It says I don't want to boil it.
Now, what are we doing now?
We're simmering.
Simmering,
right?
Okay.
I don't want to boil the flavor out of it. What
No.
I want to do is reduce the water so that,
Slowly.
again, yes. So you get this light little rumble.
Okay.
The more that I can stand there with it, the bigger rumble I can have.
Oh.
The more I have to walk away from it, the less rumble I want.
Okay.
I do go to bed, I'll fess up, and leave stuff to simmer and wake up every couple hours and make sure that it's okay and add more water if I need to.
Wow. Okay.
It happens. I cook every now and then, so it's all right. But that's my point with when you're in that preservation stage of investing. You want that rumble to be as much as you can take. You don't want to boil. You don't want a 2008 taking you out, right?
Right.
But it doesn't mean that you just want it to sit in the refrigerator cold.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
You've got to have that right temperature.
Because it's building slowly.
You've got to have that right temperature for you, for what you can handle, for what you're trying to accomplish, for the number of years that you need to accomplish it for.
Okay.
Right? And then eventually we're going to start to take that money out. And that's when I'm going to turn that simmer down, right? And I'm going to be really, really nice and good with it.
Mm-hmm.
So what's braising? How does that fit in? Well, braising is designed to use both heat and liquid.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're a slow cooker or a pressure cooker, those are both types of braising.
Okay.
But it's designed technically for cheaper pieces of meat, right? So you may get a pot roast because you can't afford a ribeye, right? And you're going to put liquid in the pan and heat, but you're only going to take it up to about 2/3 of the piece of meat that's there, right?
Okay.
And then you're going to let it do its thing. I love using Zinfandel, by the way, with pot roast.
Oh, really?
And, using it as the liquid. It's Well, now I'm distracted. But here's the point, folks. When it comes to your portfolio, you've got to apply the right amount of heat that you can both accept and need to be able to get the job done. Do not buy into this notion that, well, now I'm 70, so I should be all in fixed income or all in CDs or all in cash because I can't handle the volatility. You're making different dishes to do different things. Money needs to be used differently. Remember, investing is a function of need, not of age. Do not buy into that. You got gray hair, here's what you ought to own stuff. Do not buy into that. You've got 30 years of life left. If you're age 60, two of you married, right, and you both make it to 60, 90% probability one of you makes it to 90 according to the actuaries. Hey, I got to take a break. You're listening to Consider This. I'm Joe Clark along with Sherry Contos. We'll be right back.
Welcome to Consider This with Big Joe Clark. Joe is a certified financial planner with more than 28 years of experience in the financial services industry. He serves as the managing partner of the Financial Enhancement Group, LLC. The Financial Enhancement Group is an SEC-registered investment advisory firm based in Indiana with more than $200 million in assets, serving clients in more than 20 states. Indiana offices are located in Anderson, Fishers, Lafayette, and Rensselaer, as well as Sonoma County, California. The show is for educational purposes, and you're strongly encouraged to consult your advisor regarding your individual issues and opportunities. Joe can be reached at 800-928-4001. You can find more information about Joe and the Financial Enhancement Group at yourlifeafterwork.com. Enjoy the show, and remember to consider this.
Well, good morning and welcome back to Consider This. I'm Joe Clark.
I'm Sherry Contos.
I'm happy to have you along. You too, Sherry.
Yeah, thank you.
And all of you that are listening. Hey, there's a lot of places in the world where you can get information about investing. Whether people want to say it or not, investing is easy. It's just not simple. You can go online and get enough data to be able to make some decisions about some things. It's the wisdom that you have to apply it. And it's we have people that we buy information from, real big names that some of you would know, some of you wouldn't. And it's amazing the number of times that the two of the three that we use disagree with one another, and then
funny?
I've got my own opinion, which is different than theirs. That's why we have to be able to blend it and meld it together a little bit better.
Sense.
Investopedia is one of the places that I end up writing for every now and then, and people can pose questions, and then CPAs, certified financial planners, qualified people can go on and give their answers. I don't always agree with the answers, but I think the questions are pretty good.
Sure.
If you've got a question, something you want to hear, you can always email us, considerthis@yourlifeafterwork.com. But for today, let's go knock out some questions.
Okay, so I have some questions here for you, Joe. First one, should I sell my condo in order to pay off student loans? And here's a scenario. I'd like to sell my rental condo to pay off school loans. I can make about $100,000 on the sale, and then $50,000 would go to the loans.
Okay, so real estate is a wonderful, wonderful thing to own from a tax perspective.
Okay.
It is a horrible, ugly, painful thing to sell. There's this cute little thing called recapture. So when you own a property, and we're talking about when you rent now, not when you live in. Remember, you can have two places that you live in. You don't get to deduct anything other than the mortgage interest, and that's assuming you itemize.
Right.
But in this case, if let's say he bought the condo for $100,000, his CPA helped him attribute part of that to the ground that it was built on. That you can never deduct. Let's say that was $10,000, and he has a $90,000 condo, right? Each year that he has owned it, he has been able to take a deduction for depreciation on the property. So when we talk about basis, his tax basis is what he paid for it,
right,
plus what he's added to it, minus what he's deducted for those additions and depreciation.
Okay.
When he goes to sell it, so let's say he bought it for $100 and he's going to make $100, so he's selling it for $200. That first $100, right? If he's fully depreciated it, so he's got his $10,000 basis for the ground, but if he's fully depreciated it, that $90,000, that first $90,000 is not going to be taxed as a long-term capital gain. It's going to be taxed as ordinary income.
Okay.
Right, which really can muck up the waters, and you throw that much income on your return in 1 year, you can create a problem.
Wow.
So it depends on how long he's owned it.
Okay.
There are other strategies that you might want to consider using as avoiding the tax man, like borrowing money if it's still paying its own weight.
Yeah.
You may want to get a loan against it, take the capital out. The loan's not taxable. Use the loan to pay off your student loans and let the rent that's coming in from the facility continue to make the payment.
Huh. Wow. That sounds like a good idea. Okay. Question number 2. What are advisors using as a benchmark for life expectancy in planning now?
Good plan. You always need to look at it. Life expectancy is a strange thing because people will say for instance, when I was born in 1966, I believe the life expectancy for a male was 74. Today, the insurance company would tell you my actuarial table is closer to 86.
Wow.
And people say, well, thus people are living longer. We're not really living that much longer. What's happened is more of us are living longer. There's a difference.
Right.
We have more 90-year-olds now than we used to. We still don't have 140-year-olds.
Right.
We're not necessarily living longer. More of us are living longer. There's a difference. But from a life expectancy table, you can go online and look and pull up your life expectancy based on the age that you've attained. So we don't lose a lot of kids in childbirth anymore, right? But we used to. Haven't gone to war where people have been shot and killed here for a while. Fortunately, thank goodness. Right.
Yeah.
40s the first heart attack, 50s the second heart attack. women during childbirth years, right? Once we've made it through that, our life expectancy tends to increase. So what we do is take your life expectancy and add 5 years. What I find are most of the people who show up in my office have taken better care of themselves. They've had better opportunities for health care, et cetera. They're not at a bar at 3:00 last night.
Right. Yep.
And so we always add 5 years. And then as you age, you keep pushing that number out a little bit, right? Because we never want to, it may sound good to some of you to hand the last dollar to the mortician. It just doesn't work that way in reality.
No, makes sense. Okay, so here's a question I'm going to need you to explain before you answer. Is it better to invest in EFTs through a brokerage account or a non-deductible IRA?
Okay, so
explain
the reason I have to explain it is because it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Oh, okay, all right.
An ETF, not an EFT. An ETF is an exchange-traded fund.
Right.
It's a unit investment trust. It's one of my favorite things to be able to use because they are transparent. The taxation is totally controlled, and they're much, much cheaper than a mutual fund.
Right.
Right. So when the problem with the question is it better to use it inside of an IRA or is it better to use it inside of a retail account?
Right.
That's taxed. That's what when you hear the word retail, it just means it's exposed to the tax man. So you're going to pay taxes on dividends, capital gains, et cetera.
Right.
If your bracket's high enough. The answer is I use them in both. We do not use actively traded mutual funds that are open-ended, which is what most people have in their 401ks, and many people listening to the show use. The exchange-traded funds are much more efficient, cheaper, transparent, much, much better way to go. And my 401k, for instance, is all in ETFs.
Okay.
25 people on the team at the Financial Enhancement Group, and everyone's got a 401k, and they're all in ETFs, not in mutual funds. So the key thing to remember, just cheaper, transparent. I love transparency. I want to know what I own and much more tax efficient.
Right. Okay. Last question. What should my mother do with a variable annuity if she is concerned about a market downturn?
Well, here's the cool thing about, and I'm not an advocate or proponent of saying that variable annuities are good or bad. We don't sell them.
Okay.
We do use a no-load advisor only variable annuity for people who already own variable annuities. For the most of the time, we never touch them.
Okay.
But once you're already in the contract, once you're in there, there are many, many different things that you can invest in. I've had people, Jackson National, for instance, I've had people who've heard me on the radio and say, will you become the agent of record? Will you take over managing the money at Jackson National because they've done a horrible job? And the answer is yes, we will. We've got quite a few millions that are there. We've had other people say, hey, I love my Jackson National contract. It's done amazing things for me. And they both had the same exact contract. So what's the difference?
Interesting, yeah.
It was how they were invested inside.
Oh.
So if you think about it, an annuity is just a wrapper. It holds what we would call the investment stuff, stocks, bonds, and cash.
Yeah.
And you get to make that election in terms of what you want. So if mama's worried about a market correction, one, you can call us and we will help put an allocation together for her so that she doesn't have to worry about it.
Okay.
Two, there are guaranteed choices that are inside of there that you can use.
You can do.
But three, let's not worry about, something that's going on. One of the top money forecasters in the country has been on CNBC the last 2 weeks going, you got to pull your money out of the market now. You got to pull your money out of the market now. The problem was he also said that last September. He also said that this last December. He also said that in February. You just can't. You should never be all of anything, right? And so, it's about proper management, proper understanding of what's going on. Great questions, though. And if you've got a question or comment that you would like to use or like us to talk about, email me. Consider this at yourlifeafterwork.com. We will take a stab at being able to answer it. And yes, if you've got a variable annuity or you've got life insurance policies that are out there, for goodness sakes, before you just surrender them or make changes, give us a call. Sit down. We'll have a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
I will show you some of the tax code things that you can use to defend your tax return and make sure you get the biggest bang for your buck. Hey, you're listening to Consider This. I'm Joe Clark, along with Sherry Contos. We got to take a break, but we'll be right back. Don't forget to call us, 800-928-4001, or email me, considerthis@yourlifeafterwork.com.
Welcome to Consider This with Big Joe Clark. Joe is a certified financial planner with more than 28 years of experience in the financial services industry. He serves as the managing partner of the Financial Enhancement Group, LLC. The Financial Enhancement Group is an SEC-registered investment advisory firm based in Indiana, with more than $200 million in assets, serving clients in more than 20 states. Indiana offices are located in Anderson, Fishers, Lafayette, and Rensselaer, as well as Sonoma County, California. This show is for educational purposes, and you're strongly encouraged to consult your advisor regarding your individual issues and opportunities. Joe can be reached at 800-928-4001. You can find more information about Joe and the Financial Enhancement Group at yourlifeafterwork.com. Enjoy the show, and remember to consider this.
Well, good morning and welcome back to Consider This. I'm Joe Clark.
I'm Sherry Contos.
Happy to have you along.
We are.
I'm going to talk about one of these topics that has got me in trouble for a long time.
Really?
Yeah. People get sick, they get older, and they wind up needing long-term care or going to a facility.
Right.
Now, first and foremost, let me preface this by saying I grew up working in nursing homes. I've been an orderly. I've worked in the kitchen. It's how I paid for school and cars and everything else.
I did not know that.
The Veterans Home was where I was an orderly. It's the only place in the world I would ever do that. And my heart goes out to anybody who does do that type of work.
Wow.
Here's the point. It's expensive. It wrecks people financially. There's no doubt that this is a problem.
Right.
Now,
more and more, too.
The challenge is I am a certified financial planner, which means I have been educated, not just emotionalized.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And I don't buy things nor sell things simply because I've been emotionalized, right? Or scared into something. So with risk, with any risk, whether it's investment, any decision you make, marriage, any of them, right? There are 4 things you can do with risk. I can retain risk. So I always, when I taught at Purdue, I always used the example of my Harley Davidson that I used to have, right? So I can retain the risk. I can go ride when it's rainy without a helmet anytime I want. I'm a grown man. I'm sorry, mother. Right?
Yeah.
I can retain that risk.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Now I can reduce that risk
Yeah.
by putting on a helmet
Sure.
or not riding when it's wet outside.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, I just do that, right?
Right.
So I can avoid it, the risk. It's raining, Mom. I know it would make you very scared and sad if I went out road. So I can just leave the Harley in the garage. I can avoid the risk.
Sure.
Or I can transfer the risk. Now, how do I transfer the risk? Well, I transfer the risk by buying a life insurance policy and a disability insurance policy so that if something bad happens to me, right, at least there's income that's still coming in for my family if I'm gone.
Right.
I can do that because not a lot of 50-year-olds die. I can buy the life insurance and the disability policies. We can do that. So back in 1997, I went on the radio, a young CFP who was full of
Ideas.
data and idea, right? And somebody came to me and said, Mr. Clark, you need to sell long-term care insurance. And I go, okay. Said, your clients want it. They did. They do. I said, yeah. He said, we're going to pay you a 35% commission. I go, wow, that's pretty cool. I like commission. That's a nice thing. And I'm not saying anything bad about people who sell stuff for commission. That's not my point, right? He said, here's the deal. People really need this stuff. I'm going, man, yeah, they do. I know it's bad. I worked in nursing homes. I've seen it. They said, but 1 out of 2 of us are going to end up needing long-term care. And I go, hold the coffee. What do you mean 1 out of 2? He goes, our numbers say 1 out of 2 people are going to need to use long-term care. And I said, Houston, we have a problem. Because when I transfer risk, by definition, it needs to be something that is a low probability of occurrence with a high cost. Right?
Yeah.
Low probability of occurrence. The reason I can insure my house against fire
is because it's probably
most
not
of them
gonna
don't
happen.
burn down.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
If you're telling me 1 out of 2 people need this, Houston,
yeah,
you're going to charge
kind
my
of
client
insurance are you
$45.
gonna-
You're going to charge them $4,500 a year.
Wow.
And pay them $60,000 a year if they need it. I'm pretty good at what I do, and I can't get those returns. Right? So, you fast forward, and what happened is General Electric had to get rid of their division in long-term care. It's no longer sold in Florida. People have had 3 and 4 premium rate increases. But I'm obligated to tell people about long-term care and what's going on.
Right.
It's not my favorite thing to buy. That does not mean if you already own it, don't go sell it or get rid of it or surrender it. Do not do that. That's not my point. I am a fan of hybrid life insurance policies because they're different than the other. But that's, again, another conversation we can have. This question was, Joe, is my long-term care insurance deductible? And the answer is sorta, right? First of all, for anything to be deductible, you have to itemize, right? So whenever when we talk about reading your return, right, you want to go to the bottom. In this case, you want to go to the bottom of page 1. It's going to tell us your adjusted gross income.
Mm-hmm.
Line 43 is going to tell us your taxable income. Mm-hmm. In this case, it's all about that AGI, bottom of page 1. And if you itemize, right, which means you're taking more than the standard deduction, and if your medical costs are more than 10% of your adjusted gross income, right, then yes, you can deduct it. You can deduct your long-term care. Now, the amount that you can deduct is actually based on your age. So if you're 40 or younger, you can only deduct $410 off of your return. That's assuming you paid it. If you're between 50 but not older than 60, it's $1,530. And if you're over 70, you can deduct up to $5,100 a year, $5,110 to be technically accurate. But here's the point. If you're working with somebody like us at the Financial Enhancement Group, what you're going to find in retirement is that your AGI may fluctuate from a year-to-year period of time because of unknown income recognition that, you've got a contract that's got paid out. Suddenly you have required minimum distributions that could change things. You may have had a lot of medical bills one year, and suddenly you're above that 10% threshold, and now your long-term care is deductible. So it's not a yes, it always is kind of thing. Mm-hmm. It is the point is that it's there. It's something that you need to be aware of for when your income switches. You certainly need to be telling your tax preparer, your CPA, that you've got long-term care. It's in most of their questionnaire files. Just a lot of people don't necessarily put the number in there so that the CPA understands that it's existing.
I have a question. So if I came to you today and I'm in my 50s and I don't have long-term care, but I'm concerned about that possibility when I get older, what would be your recommendation? Would you recommend looking at that or handling it some other way?
First of all, I would look to see what your other resources were.
Sure.
Right? So if you have other resources, we've got people who own long-term care policies who generate more than $100,000 a year of income, right, from their passive investments.
Sure.
So if they went to a nursing home, it's not going to wipe them out. Their estate's just not going to continue to grow, right?
Right.
So they're essentially paying a long-term care premium in order to protect the growth of their estate for their kids.
Right.
Right. So if you had enough income, if you didn't already own one, I would never tell you to get rid of one.
Right.
But if you didn't already own one and your assets were big enough, I would tell you to understand that it is a risk, but it's a risk that we're going to retain.
Some other way.
Some other way. Yeah, we're going to be able to take care of it.
I got it.
Now, for people who already have annuity contracts that are out there that have been tax deferred, that are thinking about this, something that insurance agents don't pay attention to because they just want to sell the long-term care policies.
Right, yeah.
You are able to use a 1035 tax-free exchange if you've got an annuity that's out there to buy long-term care. And not that I think it's always a great idea, but if you're going to do it, I want you to do it the best way that you possibly can.
Right.
I think the key thing is to do a genuinely true assessment to see what your financial power is to decide whether you need it or not. I am agnostic against many products. And this one, I've got a true make sure you understand what it is you're getting into kind of feeling. There's a company that's essentially got a negative $350 million balance sheet, all because of long-term care policies. It's the company that General Electric has finally figured out and spun off, I think, in 01 or 02. There's just challenges that are here.
Yeah.
Well, folks, you've been listening to Consider This with Joe Clark and Sherry Contos. If you are one of our WIBC listeners, we're happy to have you along. But the show's done for you today. You can get the fifth and final segment online at yourlifeafterwork.com. It's always there. You can also find it at iTunes. Consider This with Big Joe Clark. More than happy to have your questions or comments. Don't forget to shoot us an email. Consider this at yourlifeafterwork.com. And, of course, you can call us at 800-928-4001. We wish you guys a great and happy week. For the rest of you, Sherry and I will be right back.
Welcome to Consider This with Big Joe Clark. Joe is a certified financial planner with more than 28 years of experience in the financial services industry. He serves as the managing partner of the Financial Enhancement Group, LLC. The Financial Enhancement Group is an SEC-registered investment advisory firm based in Indiana with more than $200 million in assets, serving clients in more than 20 states. Indiana offices are located in Anderson, Fishers, Lafayette, and Rensselaer, as well as Sonoma County, California. This show is for educational purposes, and you're strongly encouraged to consult your advisor regarding your individual issues and opportunities. Joe can be reached at 800-928-4001. You can find more information about Joe and the Financial Enhancement Group at yourlifeafterwork.com. Enjoy the show, and remember to consider this.
Well, good morning and welcome back to Consider This. I'm Joe Clark.
I'm Sherry Cantos.
Time for Sherry's favorite part of the show.
Oh, yeah, this is fun.
Here we go.
This is different, this one.
Uh-oh.
This is an article I ran across. It came across my feed, on my Google feed. I mean, I don't do Facebook or any of that stuff, but this came across, and it caught my attention, so I thought we'll just talk about it. So the title of the article is, What Are My Must-Dos as a Newlywed? Financial must-dos as a newlywed.
Financial must-dos as a newlywed.
Yes. And so this came from a Nerd Wallet.
Nerd Wallet, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So she lists 3 things, but I want your opinion because I'm thinking if I'm your client and I come in and I'm not married yet, but I know I'm going to be.
There you go. That would be the first step.
Right. Things that you would want me to have thought about or get in line or whatever. So first thing she lists is to agree on short and long-term financial goals.
Yes, and two sides, spending and saving.
Right.
People often will talk about the saving objective, and they will often talk about elimination of debt.
Right.
But they don't necessarily coincide. It's an interesting demographic, but at 33 on average in America, both debt ratio and savings ratio both go up.
Yeah.
And that's because some of us at 33 start saving like crazy, and some of us buy houses and start spending like crazy.
So the
couch
same
is
person?
No, it's the same. It's the same age.
Okay.
Obviously, different people.
Okay.
But you can very easily have people in a household that disagree on what that savings objective can be. I regularly, you've heard me say with retirement, how much are you putting into your 401k every year? How do you know that that's the right amount? Don't limit it to what the IRS says,
right.
Department of Labor says. What if you're putting in too little, but what if you're putting in too much, right?
Right.
So I've got families that come to me that are in their 50s they've saved $1 million, $1.5 million in their 50s. But it's because they didn't do a lot of things that they could have been doing and having more fun.
Right.
Right.
And
I will tell you in 2 cases, one of the spouses ain't so happy. Right.
Yeah.
The savings rate that the one had was much more than what the other really wanted.
That's not good. That's good. So one of the things they mentioned, which I had not really thought about, is do you know your potential, your future mate's credit score? I mean, let's assume you know their income, but do you know their credit score? Because when you get married, that's going to matter, right?
The credit score matters for more things than people know.
Okay.
Some people say, credit score doesn't matter unless I'm going to get a loan. Yeah, it does. Your car insurance rates, for instance, are based on your credit score. They know the higher your credit score, the less likely you are to turn in dings. You just go and have it fixed and do things. But the credit score is an important part of the equation.
Right.
I've never thought about telling somebody to get a credit score, quite frankly, but that's a great idea.
Okay. So her number 2 thing is decide how to manage bank accounts. And this is the one that kind of caught my attention a little bit because, when you come together, you're each going to probably already have your own checking account, savings accounts, or whatever. So are you going to start a new one? Are you going to merge your stuff or what? So I want to know what you think, and then I'll tell you what she suggests.
Well, I will tell you that in our world, in our life, we have one checking account. I think it's dangerous to have more than that. Leads to suspicion and everything else that's going on. I probably have 20% of my families in long-term marriages that each have their own bank account. And they'll have a joint one, and then they have their individual ones. And I guess I have done that to a degree with credit cards.
Yeah.
I pay off the balance of both of them every month, but she's got her card, so I can
Right.
see where spending is going, and
Mhm.
I've got my card, so I can see where spending is going.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the same thing as what the older families have done, where they each had their own checking account and then the joint checking account that paid all the household bills.
Yeah. So maybe the credit card thing I can see for your credit score, though, as an individual person, it might be good for me to have established a credit score of my own.
Oh
right?
yeah,
I mean, that
you
would have
still
been-
yes, both of you still need to, and it doesn't. When you're married, especially, Barb and I will be married for 29 years this year.
Right.
When you're married, that credit score is pretty much joint. I mean,
Right.
her number is like one off of mine.
Right.
And
Yeah, that makes
just
sense.
crazy stuff.
Makes sense. So what she suggests on this is if you're going to have two accounts, decide the major bills like rent or mortgage, car, or whatever, utilities, and who's going to pay what, who's going to pay what percentage, and have automatic withdrawals of that amount into a joint account from your individual. That's kind of my.
I don't know
you don't
about all
think
that.
so?
I that one I haven't seen. There's usually what happens 80% of the time is somebody takes care of the short term, which means they take care of the cash flow. Here's your allowance, honey. I know you make $100,000 a year. Here's your $100 for the week.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
and
right.
they pay the house payment and the car payments, and if there are any of those payments, all of that other
all-
stuff.
the one person
they take
does
care
it.
of cash flow and the short term stuff.
Makes sense.
And then the other spouse takes care of the 401k, the IRAs, the long term investing.
Okay.
That's how it works in practice.
Right.
Now, one of the things that always concerns me,
Mm-hmm.
is, if something happened to me, Barb's got the financial enhancement group.
Right.
By contract, all of our resources have to stay here.
Sure.
But many times I see people who are doing this on their own, and their spouse does not do the long term planning, and all of a sudden he or she dies.
Yep.
And now you're sitting here going, okay, what do I do with
What
all
do
of
I
this?
do?
Who do I trust?
Exactly.
Who do I turn to?
Exactly.
And that's where I think people really wind up in some mistake areas. We've got several families that have come in that said, listen, I'm not ready for you yet. But I want my wife or I want my husband to know I like you, I trust you, I like what your firm does, and we want each other to know each other and to be able to have conversations, before that time occurs.
Sure.
And I call it filing your flight plan. Is
Yeah.
really what's going on.
Right.
That way, all of the continuity is not destroyed. All things are not lost.
Right.
And generally, when people come in, once I talk to them about the tax return, we usually speed that process up anyhow. So it's fine. I have no problem doing it. And I would really like to know both of you before one of you is gone.
Sure. Okay. So the third thing she says is update beneficiaries, which is kind of a duh.
My first or second $250,000 account came because a guy at Delco Remy did not change his beneficiary on his life insurance.
Wow.
They'd been divorced for 13 years.
Oh my gosh.
And the beneficiary document, he'd been remarried. The beneficiary document actually is the more important than a will, more important than anything else. The 401k, even though he didn't change it, had to go to his new wife because that's a Department of Labor rule.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The spouse, unless they've signed off after the
Has-
marriage, not even a
gets-
prenuptial holds it.
Right. Yeah.
Has to go there. So it doesn't matter what I put down. I can put the Easter Bunny. If something happens to me on my 401k, it's going to Barb.
Right.
right. But the other insurance, it's if I left it to the Mickey Mouse, it's going to Mickey.
Wow. Okay. So that, here's the thing about that article. Newlyweds can come in all sizes and all ages. So like, I think her point was like, I'm going to say it appeared to be like, I'm 30, I'm 35, I'm getting married, maybe for the first time. All of those things that you consider change, I think, if you're getting remarried or some people get married in their 60s. Some people get married.
I'll have it happen every year.
Right.
I've got one that's going to happen this week that's in their higher 80s.
Yeah. So, and when that happened, we are almost out of time here, but your approach to that would be different. How?
Yeah, that's the only time when you have a later stage marriage. I don't know when you enter the decision of a prenuptial agreement. Lord knows I don't think you could do it with your first one.
No.
If you'd lost a spouse and you had kids from a previous marriage, I think the prenuptial is one of those things that you have to at least discuss and understand the implication.
Sure.
One of the reasons I have a trust is set up. I don't want Barb to be alone for the rest of her life if something happened to me.
Yep.
But that doesn't mean that I don't want the kids to make sure that they're getting resources.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
And so I'm able to do that with some of our legacy planning stuff.
Yep.
Hey, you've been listening to Consider This. Joe Clark, Sherry Contos, so happy to have you along. You got a question or comment, shoot us an email, considerthis@yourlifeafterwork.com. Have an outstanding week. We'll be right back.
Welcome to Consider This with Big Joe Clark. Joe is a certified financial planner with more than 28 years of experience in the financial services industry. He serves as the managing partner of the Financial Enhancement Group, LLC, and also taught financial planning at Purdue University for 7 years. The Financial Enhancement Group is an SEC-registered investment advisory firm based in Indiana with more than $200 million in assets, serving clients in more than 20 states. Indiana offices are located in Anderson, Fishers, Lafayette, and Rensselaer, as well as Sonoma County, California. This show is for educational purposes, and you're strongly encouraged to consult your advisor regarding your individual issues and opportunities. Joe can be reached at 800-928-4001. You can find more information about Joe and the Financial Enhancement Group at yourlifeafterwork.com. Enjoy the show, and remember to consider this.
Well, good morning and welcome back to Consider This.
I'm Sherry Contos.
You are. I'm Joe Clark. It's the fastest hour in radio, guys. We just thoroughly love investing the time with you guys, trying to teach you more about money. Had a great week. Had a couple events at the Anderson Library with Terry Austin, our state representative, and been able to teach people to better understand their money. It's very, very important to me. I feel like it's my life's calling.
Mm-hmm.
Some people have called me a financial pastor. I do a lot of this in churches, and we've been in Noblesville Baptist, helping them with some of their things and understanding money and how to give better and, how to use that tax return. And those are the kind of things that we like to talk about on the show. But one of the things that is of great interest to me when we talk about those 5 critical elements, your life after work, tax planning, the investment playbook, life happens, it's the good and bad and ugly of life, and legacy planning. The reason I don't call it estate planning is because it's more than money. You're wanting to leave something behind. And I like to pay attention to best practices, things that are out there. And we used to have a guy who worked here that was retired from General Motors, George Karras. And one of the things that George did for his daughters was when the time they started their freshman year in high school, he would write in the journal every day something that he wanted to tell them or something that they did or experienced that day. And that was the gift that they gave and made for graduation present. And
cool.
Both of the girls worked here during their high school career, so I know what it meant to them when they received it. So one of those things from a legacy plan, we can't go back. My daughters are 20 and 25. I can't go backwards in time and do this.
Right.
But one of the things that I have seen done is people actually writing those kind of letters or memoirs, if you will, to the grandkids and leaving that legacy behind. This is what we did. Mm-hmm. This is what it meant to me and what I hope you're able to do with it with your life. Hopefully you're alive when they're able to read it and understand it. But if they're not, I think it is a great memoir, a great legacy to leave behind so that more than just money passes on. It's really that. It's not just the family name. It's not just the family assets. It is really the family culture of here's who we are. Here's why we are. Why did we go on this vacation? Why did we care about Uncle Jimmy? What memories are there? Just take the time, my friends. Time is such a wonderful and precious gift. We hope you have an outstanding week. If anything we can do for you at all, don't hesitate to let us know. 800-928-4001. God bless. Have a great week. We'll see you again soon.
Thanks for listening to Consider This with Big Joe Clark. Joe can be reached at 800-928-4001 or via email at bigjoe@yourlifeafterwork.com. The Financial Enhancement Group, LLC, is based at 429 East 14th Street, Anderson, Indiana, 46016. Be sure to check out their website for more information at yourlifeafterwork.com.